Okay, so the double hoe. I kind of got this idea from a Jerry French fly. Tied the dirty hoe and the skinny hoe. Essentially, piece of rabbit coming out the back. Nice shoulder. With this one, what I did is I really like the idea of a twin tail. And so what I did is I started playing around with zonker strips coming off the back, 2 of them, and it looked really cool. But what I was noticing is, you could build up a good shoulder, but at the end of the day, rabbit's going to come together, and it just didn't look good. So one night I was watching Vikings and Sperry the Gory Details. There's this thing that they called a blood eagle, and essentially ribs, whatever, you get it. But so what I did is I took some 100-pound mono and put it going down the back and wrapped it through the zonker, and essentially what that does is keep it more of a prop, gives you a good silhouette, nice and wide, and it looks real prawny, real squiddy, real kind of buggy, that look you're looking for, out of a steelhead fly, or even kings, anything like that. There's thousands of ways to tie it. Essentially this one though, I've got some Amherst coming out the back, which I don't do on most of them. This was something kind of different I tried, but anyways, the idea behind it is, when you're swinging, anytime you look at a fly, I noticed a lot of guys, they tie, like say like a prom dress or something like that. They make all these different layers, and at the end of the day, big sweeping veil coming over the back. And with that veil, you just didn't get any kind of real movement, no contrast, no nothing. That's where I think the composite loop, Jerry French has kind of revolutionized that look to where everything's a little bit more segmented. It looks a little bit more lifelike, not an exact representation, but a good example of what should be something that's alive and moving, more like a replica. And having confidence, fishing in Alaska, I can never stand throwing those just big goofy orange, kind of bucktail flies. Even with my marabou intruders, when I was tying them up there, just didn't have any confidence in them. I started tying composite loops, just segmentation, everything looks so much better. A lot more contrast, and it doesn't just fold down. It doesn't fold down like a fly. You've got a lot more props on them, and they just hold up like nobody's business. Even the rabbit, stripping it down to just the bare minimum on the ends, where you've got that fur left over. This is a really strong hide. And I would see a lot of guys throwing stuff like big just tubes with just marabou with the flesh still intact, wrap around it, no weight. Well, the fly doesn't sink. It just doesn't, hands down. So there's really no way to do that without some kind of implementation on your rabbit. A lot of these I add weight to them most of the time. I like to tuck it in the actual loops. Believe it or not, there's dumbbell eyes in here. Same thing with these right here. They've all got dumbbell eyes on the inside. Gives you a little bit more separation, almost like a classic intruder. But this is nowhere near a classic intruder. 2 different stations, but not an intruder. The separation on the body on the inside, it's not near enough. This just doesn't have the characteristics of one. This is, like I said, it's a Jerry French hoe style fly, yeah, that's pretty much it. So let's tie one. Okay, so tie this on a tube. You can tie it on a shank, anything like that. Weight dependent, whatever. Change it up. But as far as this one goes, we're going to tie it on a tube. So thread base. This is 210 denier. Pretty strong. Not going to break on you, especially when you're twisting up composite loops. So, especially with this too, it's going to get a little bulky when your thread wraps. No worries, whatever. It's all going to be covered by a composite loop. veil's gonna come back, it's gonna be killer. All right, so first thing I do, this is 100-pound mono, just some heavier line, anything will do, but as long as it's some kind of heavy mono. And I've crimped the ends. This is a little bit longer just to get it started. This is going to be the backbone for the zonker tails that are going to come out the back. So this is the first thing that's going to go on. So I'm just going to tie this on. Pretty split angle. I like them to be angled up just a bit, just so we get a cool kind of flare on it. It looks a little more natural than just straight out. You get a little kick up to it. It looks pretty cool. Plus, too, it helps it ride proper in the water. So, lash that one down. Same thing over here. This guy, like I said, just a slight angle up gives it a pretty cool effect. Alright, that looks about right. Cool. Now, normally I would glue this down, but I'm not going to do it now because this is a video and I really don't care to. So, some dubbing. This is STS Trilobal. And this is the, it's like a pink chartreuse color. I like the STS for this and not the ice dub. It sinks a little bit more and it's really skinny back here. And so it actually tails a little bit more than like ice dub would. So I don't want it super bulky. I really want it to kind of lay down, honestly. This stuff's a little bit finer and not real kinky like ice dub is. So I like using this on the end butt. So all I'm doing is taking these, matching the ends up, and I don't use a ton on the back. And then all I'll do is fold it over. And we're just going to cut these in half. Then I'm going to mesh them together. I like to do opposite ends so you don't get any cut ends. They kind of marry each other. They both look kind of scraggly and out of line. Let's get a dubbing loop going. Couple wraps up. You can use wax. You don't have to use wax, but I like it. Makes it a little bit more strong. Holds together, especially when you're breaking it open. A nice pocket. That's pretty good. Like I said, don't be overbearing with this. This is just a real, kind of a little bump, which I usually don't tie those in the back, but it just kind of hides the mono up front and just a little tiny hot spot in the back. Normally I'd pick this out too, but since it's so small and such a minuscule bump, I'm just going to brush it out. 2 toothbrushes, always. One that's cut down for picking stuff out, and then I'll take a heavy toothbrush. That's just normal fat. That typically dries anything off, especially composite loops. Gets everything a little bit more flowy. There's the wax built up on this, so it's going to fall down nicely. Couple wraps. Straight down, just like that. One over the other. Bam, bam, bam. Alright. So, a nice little bump there. Alright. So now it goes in the rabbit. That's what I've got here. 2 zonker strips cut down. What I like to do, I actually like to take a razor. I like to shave these and get these real fine down to the flesh, and then I'll leave about maybe ½ an inch of the actual fur attached to the back. It just looks really nice. It looks real kind of prawny, real that, you know, just a real prawn kind of anadromous look to it. And then what I do is I take a razor, I just split a tiny slot at the very end. That's where the mono is going to go through. So we'll go ahead and attach this to this side. And this is where you're going to get a little bit bulky, but we're going to fix that. So tie that in. Not a ton of science to this. A couple loose wraps just so you can place it properly. Essentially what you want is a slight angle going up. Same thing, just like that mono. You want it following a smooth transition. It's going to look really nice, and it won't hinder the swing of this, because essentially it's still going to be loose on here once we get it through that, but I'll show you once we get to that point. So, second piece right here, I'm going to put that in. And all I'm doing at first is I just want to line them up. I'm going to get these pretty even, but that angle going up, that's what's going to keep it, you know, for the most part. You know, I'm going to add eyes to this one, but if you're running this weightless, that'll keep it swimming upright. And you know, it's essentially that water's going to grab, you know, rabbit I have a love-hate relationship with. It's so heavy, you know, with that under fur, it tends to not sink. So that's why I stripped this down. Originally I was running this weightless, and when I started adding weight to it, it sinks a lot faster. But for the most part, if you're running it weightless, you're going to want to trim this down, pull as much under fur as you can, because it takes so long to soak it up. It's not going to want to sink. So when you're putting these mono eyes in, well, essentially you're going to do, excuse me, not eyes, just the backbone. You find your slot. I'm just going to go straight through. Just like that. Alright, cool. Place it. Like I said, always leave a little bit extra, because you're going to have to play with it. And I don't glue these down at the end. I leave them hanging because it swings really nicely and it gives some nice movement to it. So leave it open, leave that hole. You know, give it a good little bit of breathing room so that can slide up and down. From the slot here, go straight through. All right. So got the tails. What I like to do is let's give them a little bit just to kind of see how we're working. It just looks pretty deadly. I mean, that's, you know, that's super prawny, super squiddy kind of looking. So yeah, that's nice. I like that. Okay, so next piece, flex hackle. I like this because I'm not a big fan of rubber legs. Honestly, I don't like the way they sit on a fly. I don't think they look super natural, which I know is, you know, for the most part, especially steelhead and salmon, trying to catch attention. But I just don't think they move really well, and they kind of hinder the swing. Just not a big fan. Tie this in. Too much going on here. That's where that bulk comes in, but that's all right. This is going to cover it up for the most part. So I found with this, most of the time a solid 4 wraps, especially with these rubber legs built into it. It's pretty thick. But if you don't put enough, it looks terrible. But if you put too much, it's just, I mean, there's just massive water, just awful. So sweeping back. I'll top it off on this one because we're a little bit more full. Okay, there. All right, we'll say that's good right there. So spot, okay. Couple wraps. All right, cool. It's killer. So see, it hides, you know, most of that bump. And this is essentially, you know, the start of a shoulder, but not really. This is more or less just the wing that's kind of covering that bump, but looks really good, and you know, it's pretty full, and that's just a ton of movement right there. So, all right, cool. So this is where you got the option. You can either add weight or not add weight. I like using dumbbell eyes, especially the fact that, you know, it gives it a keel. You know, that fly can sink properly, you know, even without these tails going up and keeping it upright. If you keel these with dumbbell eyes, you know, it's going to ride just perfect every single time. You can throw a cone on the front if you want to do that too. I'm just not a huge fan of cones. I love dumbbell eyes just for the fact that they keep you and they give you a keel. So put these right behind, and yet again, these are going to get covered. So don't worry too much about your spacing here. Keep it as close to those rubber legs as you can, but I mean, obviously you're gonna get a little bit of movement on them. So just get them like right there, lash them down decent. Again, this is a fly, you know, that we're gonna keep, you know, that hook's gonna be pointing up, just like a traditional intruder. I don't like flies that ride hook point down. It doesn't make sense to me. I'd rather have that hook point up all day. So, all right, that looks pretty good. A couple more wraps over here. And again, too, this is where you can glue your eyes down right here and get them locked in. But I mean, I'm not going to do it right now. I'm just not too worried about it. So, all right, cool. There's that. It's looking pretty even. All right, good. All right. So, dubbing loop over this right here. This time I'm going to use some more STS. This is a peach color. It's kind of an orange pink, little bit of kind of like a olive tied into it. This you want to go fairly heavy on, just because for some reason this color is pretty wispy, and it doesn't have a ton of volume to it. So I do the same thing with all my dubbing or my dubbing loops. Essentially, I'm evening the ends and folding them over, cutting them in half. That doubles you, because I mean, if you just put this in here, it would be massive, and it's going to act more like a veil, and it's going to push all your materials down, because this stuff is so wispy. It's real webby, and it'll push this down and hold it all back. So you cut it in half, make it a little bit more spiky, a little more buggy, and it's gonna keep it riding, you know, a little bit more right here. So this is kind of the start to the backbone, essentially. All right, dubbing loop. Get this one a little bit bigger. So with these eyes, I really don't have a science to it. I just cover them, try to make it look nice. I tend to, at the bottom, it tends to show a little bit, but it actually looks kind of cool, because when you get a little bit more up top, it almost looks a little more like a kind of a natural prawn, where, you know, the casing is coming over the top. It looks pretty cool. It gives it a cool effect. Just gonna get this loop, this dubbing loop. Oh man, fidgety coffee hands. All right, cool. That looks pretty awesome. Space it out. I like these a little bit sparse at first, just because it's going to wind up big time. We'll do this one a little bit tighter. Spin it up. Very good. Bam. 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 That looks good. This one I'm going to pick out a little bit upstream. Be mean to it. There's too many times where you see flies that guys just kind of clump it in there, but they don't really, you know, focus on measuring it out, and, you know, 3/4 of the dubbing is just lost the second you start spinning, or you can sit there and just pull it out. Plus, too, that just soaks up a lot of water, and it creates air pockets, and essentially over time, the fly's going to ride completely different. When you do it like this, you know exactly what you're getting. With clumpy dubbing, it's just taking up volume, and it's just going to sink slower, and it's not going to ride properly. So, all right, we got that one. Looks good. Kind of struggle to just get it kind of fairly even. All right. Wraps up here. Like I said, this is really just to cover the thread on the eyes. And there is no rhyme or reason in my book to this. I just kind of go with what looks good. And that looks super. So that's going to work for me. When we pick this out, it's going to flare a little bit more. So it's kind of all trapped in there right now, but it'll start showing once we get it through. It wraps back. First things first, pick up this dummy ball. See how you get that effect where up front it's a little heavier on the top side, so it almost looks like kind of a natural shell, something like a prawn or something like that would have. Looks pretty awesome. And it covers that bump just ever so perfectly. Go through the bottom, it's trapped under there. Like I said, I'm not worried about that white showing. It's essentially going to get covered too, but this will look awesome. Alright, that's enough. Go overboard. This one, just go forward with it. Cleaned out. Bottom up a little bit. Don't be worried about losing dubbing. If it's not in there, it's going to come out eventually, and you want this thing to swing how it's going to swing, seeing it just as you're looking at it. I don't have any confidence seeing flies that it's just a clump of dubbing. I like having it a little more sparse and exactly what it's going to be and what's exactly going to stay in there. So now I've got to build a composite loop. This one's pretty simple compared to most. What I'm going to start out with is some ice dove. Ice dove UV shrimp. Super kinky. Real spongy. I use a good bit. A lot go pretty sparse on this, but I like to kind of lay it out and then pull apart as I'm going with it, just to make sure I've actually got a decent amount laid out. So you can tie this in one loop, or you can tie consecutively. I'm gonna do the mother of all feathers first, turkey. This is a tail feather. This is the only one to use. Primaries, they're cool, but they're a little too webby as opposed to something like the tail feathers. Real buggy. They've got just killer look to them, especially when you get these top pieces. The brown up here just looks super good. It looks so natural. It's got a nice kind of iridescence to it when it hits the sun, but just a killer feather. Yeah, one of my favorites. I'll always love turkey. So just kind of look for a spot here. Let's go with let's see. I like that one. Two. That one. A little chunk. Turkey. And this I'm not too worried about keeping it super straight because I'm going to cut it down anyways. It's all going to hold together pretty well because turkey is freaking awesome. Alright, I'll take this scrim. Same thing, even the edges out. This one doesn't have to be super pretty, it's just going to go over the top. Hold it down, just like that. Cool. Another loop going. This out of the way. This is where you want to play with your pick. Just evening the edges out. Bam, just like that. Yeah, that's killer. I like to break these edges up just where it's starting to pull, and then that's when I'll go through. Stream. Cool. That's good. brush it out. Cut toothbrush. You know, if you still feel it's a little bit thick, just go back through the pick and pick it out. Like this front end here, I'm not super stoked about that. Alright, moisture. Very important. Neutral spot. That's one to go about right there. That'll work. Hold it down. Back and forth. Just like that. Killer. Alright. Try to keep these little butts behind your wraps as you're going. They stick forward, they can create kind of some flare forward. But if you keep them tight and behind it, it's going to just explode right in front of it. Looks good. A little bit down the bottom. Cut it off there, just because I'm not too crazy about that piece of dubbing. Squeeze those in pretty good. Okay, so wrapped everything. Now you gotta pick. Having pick or recycled bicycle spoke. Take your pick. Just work it around. Not to pick turkey out too much. It was a pretty thin loop, so that shouldn't be too bad. All right, brush. Always forward. And the tail feathers, like I said, a lot better than the primaries. The primaries are kind of webby, as opposed to the tail feathers, they're really stout. They hold a good shape to them. So, pretty stoked with that. Cool. Okay, so next loop. This is going to be the front, hackle essentially. This is kind of that backbone. That turkey's going to hold it up real nice. And this is going to be the forward loop, the hackle, the swimmy element of this. So, alright, let's just start using the same dub. This is the shrimp dub. Right there. Same idea. Evening your ends out. Got a neat little base going on there. Cool. Alright, so first thing I'm putting in, polar flash. I got this 6 strand, something like that. I'm going to cut it about 1 3/4 inches, 2 inches. I'm just going to lay it across. Pretty even going across. I'll kind of play them all a little bit differently. And I like to keep these fairly, I like maybe 2 wraps with this stuff. I don't like to go too overboard with it because it's really not a big holding element. It can be, but I've already got that turkey in. So this is going to really kind of just give some flash and a little bit more iridescence to the fly. Alright, so there's that. This is ostrich. And clearly I'm running out. So, but that's all right because I like using the tips for this anyways. You can use the buggier ends, honestly. They look pretty awesome in there. But for this specifically, this one I think I'm going to try a little bit more of a finer tip. So, yeah, I'll go with this. I'm going to have to pull some from the other one. So, let's take these. Cut these down. Stash these off to the side. Grab a couple more from over here. And when they're different lengths, that's perfect. When you've got one that's all the same, has no movement, it looks like just a big glob. These look a lot more, I won't say realistic, but they just move a whole lot better. So, yeah, with that right there. That's perfect. So I'm going to start evening the ends out. Like I said, when I say even, I don't mean go crazy with it. You just want a kind of a random assortment, but close to each other at least. Looks all right. Even my edges out. Cool. Come in there just like that. Perfect. And see, all these ends are not even, which is exactly what you want. So they're all the same thing. It's just create a single veil that just looks like a box. When they're different, they swim and actually come apart from each other. You don't want them clumping up. So this works perfectly. I'm going to use a little bit of this front. This is more of a scrim. It's a real wispy. It's an ice dub, but it's the pearl. It's not kinky at all. It's just very, very wispy. It looks killer, and it makes a great just kind of overlayer for this top. Yeah, that's awesome. Perfect. Mash all that down. Yeah. So let's get this in a loop. Spinner. Get out of the way. Wax. Pick. That's where you can do some adjusting. Spread out the polar flash a little bit. Do that. Cool. Tuck those guys in just a little. Alright. I'm going to take a little bit of moisture just to keep the turkey back while I'm spinning this one up. Keep it out of the way. See, like that. That's okay though. Pop, spin it up, turkey out of it. Good pop. More. There we go. Looks good. Check it out. This is the one you want to be pretty aggressive on, because a lot of this dubbing is going to get trapped in with this ostrich. There's a ton of small, just little barbs built in with this stuff. And if it's building up that dubbing, it's just going to create an air pocket and you're just not going to be able to sink. It's not going to swim up. You want water to be able to pass through this. You want it to be transparent so it's swimming right. You know, if you've got just clumps of stuff in there, it's going to hinder it. It's not going to swim. It's not going to breathe right. It's just not going to swim like a proper fly. It's good to me. This one, hard brush. The cool thing about the polar flash is, you know, even when you're working it like this, it's cool. But over time, as it swims and it gets even more wet, and you work it in a little bit, it's kind of like a stranded fiber, and it actually breaks apart. You can kind of see it gets real kinky, and it kind of flares, and it creates a really cool effect. Cool. Let's get this guy laid out. There's the part. Start up top on this one. Brushing everything down. And everything will find a home. Rocking it back and forth, it'll settle out. You just got to work it a little bit. All right. Start palmering it. Close that turkey. You see how easy it is to pull it back when you've got it wet like that too. If it's kind of all over the place. And there are some occasions where I leave it dry just because it does, you know, it depends if I'm using the buggier stuff that the ostrich is down toward the base of it. I typically don't wet it. I like that to look real buggy. This kind of thins this this more spay-like stuff up top though. It thins it out a little bit more. So for this application, going wet. Just to finish it off. Yeah, that's killer. Awesome. Okay, so built up. Next thing, I'm gonna pick this guy out. This is where the magic happens. This is my favorite part of tying this fly right here. And especially with any composite loop, you really, get a lot of moisture on it. You pick it out. You really see kind of the end result and how well it looks. Because right now it's all tangled and just a total mess. But when you get it picked out and brushed out, it just pops. Just make sure it's all out. It looks pretty good. All right. Brush. Cool. I'm going to go through it at the end one more time, but I want to get a small, tiny dub collar on the front, just to cover up just a little bit right here. You don't have to do that. I think it looks nice though. I think it looks really nice. Let's do a peach bump on here. So not a ton. Even your ends out. Ooh. Slash down. Flush it out. Cool. Wraps just to seal it off. Ties on it. Cut the tube down and turn it up a little bit. A lot of guys use a razor. I can't do it. I'm not good at it, so I'm just gonna use scissors. Close. Alright. Lighter. Down. Perfect. Cleans up the edges. It's a dumb fly. This is the steelhead puke color. That's what I like to call it. Orange, purple, pink, everything good. So we've got, you know, this guy right here. You tie these with, this one's got some Amherst coming out the back, some more feelers, just a little bit more of a kind of prawny design. This one's in, this is a little bit more full of a fly right here. So that one, you know, classic orange and olive, you know, that's always deadly. And then, you know, more of a kind of a summer slash have at it kind of odds and ends fly. Yellow and purple, some pink on the end of it. You can do anything. So that's it.